Hello and welcome to the Sunday Guardian podcast by Joyeeta Basu. Now that Donald Trump is president of the United States, and now that there are military conflicts ongoing in different parts of the world, particularly Ukraine and in West Asia, Israel Hamas, Israel Hezbollah, potential Israel Iran, what exactly is the direction that this war will be taking? These wars will be taking now that Trump is there, because we also know in terms of when it comes to Trump is considered to be a quote unquote no war president. Now, to discuss all this and much more, I have a very special guest with me, Ajay Singh, who is an author and an Indian Army. He took release from Indian Army, I think sometime in 2011. Okay, and he commanded an armored regiment when in the army. Now, he took premature release primarily because he wanted to pursue his passion in writing books. And ever since, he has written 7 books. Okay, and they have ranged from, say, for example, poetry to novel to war history, military history. And right now, his current book is Ukraine, Gaza, Taiwan, A World at War. This one. All right. Mr. Singh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joyeeta. Always a pleasure interacting with you in this and other forums. And I'm looking forward to a talk, more so since you yourself have just come back from Israel and I've got a first-person account of what's happening there.
Yes. The thing is, you see, first question obviously is, what effect is, particularly let's start talking about the Ukraine war. What are we going forward, number one, which way is the war headed? When we are looking at, as I said, Trump is a no-war president. What are Putin's goals in this war? And what are Trump's red lines? And will there ever be a meeting point? So,
Get it?
Yeah.
Well, that's a very wide encompassing question.
Yes.
So, let's start with where is the war, at which stage it is at the moment.
Yes.
And I actually believe that, contrary to what the Western media and all say, Russia has already attained most of its military goals. Look at what they've got. All of Kherson, all of Zaporizhia, all of Luhansk, all of Donetsk. Most of it, almost 90% of it, right?
The regions bordering Russia.
Exactly. They've already got that. Now, as you know, Ukraine launched its much publicized Kursk invasion.
Yes.
Which really amounted to very little.
Are they still there, or have they?
They're still there, but they have, of course, pulled back to more defensible positions. They are inside Russian territory. I guess more as a psychological show of force than anything else. But the aim of that offensive, which was to make the Russian offensives in the Kharkiv and in the Donbas regions recoil, has not happened.
Okay.
In fact, Russia has intensified its operations in these areas. They have captured 680 square kilometers in the last month itself.
Okay. Not much gets reported about this.
Yes, 680 square kilometers. Now they have moved close to the city of Pokrovsk, which will give them a major town, which was the largest coke producing town of Ukraine, which also means it will strangulate the economy and give them a stepping stone to further operations. I don't think it will go beyond that. That's a different story. What I want to bring out is now both sides have been pushing for their gains. And one of the reasons is to strengthen their positions at the negotiating table.
Right.
Ukraine did try it with Kursk. I think it was a gamble that did not really pay the dividends they expected. Russia is now going all out with what they have got. Look at the signals which are emanating. Putin says, I'm going to continue till Russia's entire war aims have been met.
Exactly, that is the question.
Which is what you asked me. What are his war aims? I'm afraid, I think only Putin's own mind is aware of that.
If I can just mention one point here. I am being told that his war aim, one of his aims, is to ensure that Ukraine does not have any access to the sea, Black Sea, to basically capture Odessa and the coastline totally, so that, Ukraine is totally landlocked.
Tell me, Joyeeta, aren't they already strangulated?
Yeah.
You see the manner in which Russia has captured the entire coastline along the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea. Right? Ukraine is left with one major port, Odessa. Along a coastline, I think about 80 to 120 kilometers of coastline is left with them. The entire control of traffic through the Black Sea is already controlled by Russia.
Okay.
So, though he would love to take Odessa, I think that might be overextending himself at this juncture. Odessa is a large town. It will be a major operation, and perhaps the resources for the Russian capture of the entire coastline may not be there in the present form. But he has already controlled the entire Ukrainian coastline.
Okay.
So I think to that end, he has met his aims.
One of his aims.
Yes.
And the others is kind of building up a buffer, would you say?
Yes. Now that's nicely put. Yes. You know, the provinces in the south, Kherson, Zaporizhia, in the east, Luhansk, Donetsk. The entire land bridge which he wanted up to the Crimea is now being provided to him. He got that land bridge to Crimea. Plus, he has got a depth of almost 200 kilometers along the entire eastern flank, which in a way acts as a buffer zone, if you call it that. Right? Further united, of course, Kharkiv. They are not going beyond that. If you want him to expand if he decides to expand his war aims even further, a logical culmination point would be going further westwards to the line of the Dnieper River. You know, a beautiful geographical line which forms the ideal barrier between the two. But again, militarily, do they have the capabilities to go so far? I have my doubts on that particular issue. But yes, the capabilities to hold and consolidate in the areas which they already hold, they have that. So, the war aims and the signals which are emanating from both sides, Russia says it is willing for a peace deal. But the peace deal will be on my terms, Putin's terms. So, his terms are what we got, we keep, and Ukraine, you will be careful, we will not inflict further damage on you. Perhaps he already attained that aim.
Yeah. So what will President Trump bring to the table? You understand,
Yes.
because as I said, what are his red lines?
Red lines, okay. You know, again, most of these equations, a lot of it stems from personal equations. Look at the pronouncements which Trump has made. He has put in, he's a great guy, we can do business with him. Zelensky, he's a great salesman. Each time he comes to Washington, he goes with a check of $20 billion in his pocket. Now, isn't it an indicator of his psyche towards these two leaders? He's made it very clear that they're going to reduce aid, if not halt aid, to Ukraine. Without US aid to Ukraine, Ukraine cannot fight the war. They can only sustain about 45 days more with the existing reserves. And of course, if USA stops, all the other countries are going to stop aid as well. Now, he would be more, I would not say more willing, I mean, he is likely to accept the present peace plan in which Putin keeps what he has got. This kind of a buffer is established. There will be some sweeteners offered to Ukraine in the form of, I mean, the Ukraine will never get NATO membership in the near future, but some sweeteners in the form of security guarantees will be offered to Ukraine, which honestly won't be worth the paper it's written on, but yes, it will be the sweetener. And based on that, the war could reach some kind of a closure. If not a closure, I would say it would come to some kind of a pause at this point of time.
And what about, because you see, I mean, if that may be Trump's goal, possible, it could be. We are told that people like his, people he has surrounded himself with, like Marco Rubio and all, they are all very pro-Ukraine and they want to hammer Russia. Will he have that kind of backing from his own administration about something like this? Because this, in a way, amounts to Ukraine being thrown under the bus. According to at least Europeans, that is how it is going to be.
Wasn't Ukraine thrown under the bus from 2014 onwards?
Okay.
You see, they were armed by the USA, more the USA. Their army was built up. They were led up the garden path by being offered a NATO membership, which would never came about. When the war broke out, they've been if you take a look at it, they've been offered enough aid to keep the battle going without reaching a decisive conclusion. I think they were thrown under the bus many years earlier. Now, it'll merely be abandoned under the bus.
Okay, that's one way of putting it. But you see, there are voices that are rising in Europe saying even if the USA wants to get this peace deal done, I mean, there's obviously a rupture between American thinking under Trump and what the Europeans think, that we are the ones who should be funding Ukraine to carry on with this war. Do you think Europe has that kind of money and defense material to support Ukraine to carry on a war like that with Russia?
No. Very bluntly, no. Poland has refused categorically. They said, we're not going to give a penny more, we're going to build up our own defenses in case of a Russian expansionist threat later on. Germany is going through a recession. Why is it going through a recession? Because it is starved of energy, which was flowing in from Russia into cheap energy. There are more than enough people willing to say, okay, let's call it quits and let it be business as always and build up our own European capabilities. Because Ukraine is now becoming a losing cause.
Right.
It is becoming apparent to the world that they will not be able to sustain this battle, and maybe they are putting good money after bad. In a cause which is not like to pay dividends. So even the European countries and economy may rather spend that amount in consolidating their own defense forces, maybe forming own allies within themselves and others, rather than siphon it off to Ukraine. That's how, and remember one thing, if the war ends, the energy crisis of Europe will alleviate to some extent, which is something all European economies are looking at in today's day.
Yeah, but you see, this peace, possible peace, perhaps not a chimera, it could have been achieved much earlier as well. Would you say that the Biden administration allowed this war to continue, that these people were willing to come and sit on the negotiating table, but it was that European and especially American as well, the push for war, that is where, it is, I think, this been delayed by at least 1 or 2 years now.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. If you remember, when the entire build-up to war was taking place, all Russia was asking was for guarantees, written guarantees, that Ukraine would not join NATO, which USA refused to give them. Even though Ukraine was not permitted to join NATO eventually, and they're still pausing it and keeping on hold. So obviously the case was being built up for them to go to that actual situation of war. When Russia invaded Ukraine, especially in the first few days of the war, when they started moving towards Kyiv 24th of February, when they started barreling down towards Kyiv, there were actual negotiations between the Ukrainian delegates and the Russian delegates.
Yes.
When Kyiv was a threat stating, in which they said, okay, we will call off our invasion, and in return you will abjure your claims to joining NATO. A very simple, straightforward clause. That was scuttled by the USA. There were peace talks held in Istanbul, which again was scuttled by both the US and the UK. If you take a look at it, Eastern peace talks were happening. By a strange coincidence, Boris Johnson should land up in Kyiv supposedly to boost up their morale, but everything came to an halt. By promising them more aid and money to keep the battle going. They have been willing to fight Russia to the last Ukrainian.
Ukrainian standing. Yeah.
So the war is being fought, for vested interests between the West, pardon the pun, and Russia. Ukraine is just the patsy who's doing it for them.
Now, so the thing is that will Ukraine be willing to follow the path of peace, or is it that it doesn't have any option anymore?
Militarily, they cannot regain their military aims. Is, to quote Zelensky, to regain the last inch of Ukrainian territory from the Russians, including Crimea.
That's
right?
impossible.
Now, let me tell you, militarily, last year they launched an offensive, supposedly with the aim of getting that. In 5 months of fighting, they advanced 11 kilometers deep at only one point, only broke one forward defensive position. And the offensive stopped out there. By the calculation of the area they've captured, they say if they continue at this rate, it will take them 104 years to regain the territory they've lost.
Okay.
What I want to bring out is, militarily, they are in no position to take back the territory they have already lost. So, what can they get? They tried to increase their bargaining posture by the incursion and things like this. But unfortunately, they are so much on the back foot now that militarily they will not be able to attain the aims.
Yeah, before we start talking about the Gaza war, one last question on the Ukraine front. What has happened to all that money and the defense stuff that they have got? I mean, when you're talking about, they are not militarily in a position to gain back even maybe 11 kilometers of territory. What did they do with all that money? And, that's a big question.
Okay.
Should we be checking
the audits?
the audits? Who is auditing all that?
$160 billion of aid.
Yes.
But that $160 billion of aid did not go into Ukraine. It was 20 billion went to, say, Northrop Grumman to give them weapons. Another 20 billion went to maybe McDonald's, another 20 million to some other arms industries to provide weapons and equipment to them. So eventually the money has been siphoned more or less back within the US economy to keep its own wheels going. So even the money which has actually reached Ukraine, much of it, I believe, has been siphoned off through inefficiencies and corruption. It's not been adequately utilized and well utilized. So, remember, aid cannot sustain a war. A nation has to be self-sustaining to fight a war.
Right.
You cannot hope to fight a war on aid and say, I will win. Because now, Ukraine is in a situation like that, 45 days is the capabilities. If you take a look at the fact that the entire infrastructure and everything has been demolished, they cannot sustain the war, nor can they sustain their own economy and their own country for very much longer at this pace.
Now, if we want to talk about the Middle East, what's happening in Middle East or West Asia. Now, when we are looking at Israel in particular, Trump has given them a free hand that you can even go after Iran's nuclear installations and energy installations, which Biden had not given them. And then we are talking about in terms of even this, the new defense secretary.
Yes.
He has said something like, we will not have boots on the ground, but Israel can do whatever it wants. So, will there be peace, or do you, foresee an escalation, unlike the Ukraine where possibly there will be peace?
Yes, Ukraine, I'm going to stick my neck out and say I anticipate some kind of a deal between March and June the next year.
Okay.
Right. In the Middle East, they are saying all these things. But honestly, whichever administration would have come into power, they would have supported Israeli equally, unequivocally. Only thing is, they are more vocal about it. They make no bones of the fact, and they do not bother about niceties like humanitarian grounds.
Yeah.
Right?
Biden
Sorry to put
did.
it like that. That's what I said.
Biden did, not
he made
this
the
administration.
he made the sound bites about it. They will not even bother about the sound bites. They have already said, you do what you like to Hamas. Israel has attained its military, and Hamas has been wiped out. Its leadership is gone. 23 of its 24 battalions have been decimated, and so has almost all of Gaza. Now, what is their plan post-war is something which I still feel is something that perhaps they have not had that clear end state in mind. That will emerge. The second aim of the Israeli government was destroying, they said that the aim of this operation was to ensure Israel's long-term security. That's a term they always insist upon. Second is Hezbollah. Hezbollah, with the pager attacks and the decimation of the top leadership, they have the top and middle level leadership have been virtually
Wiped out.
decapitated. Their cadres are without communication, without direction, but they are still strong and sizable. Now, Israel has if you take a look at recently, they amended their war aims, in which they said that we will create a situation to enable the settlers on the northern borders to get back. Remember, because of Hezbollah attacks, the Israeli settlers on the Lebanon border had to evacuate, almost 50 to 60,000 of them. Now, when you create a situation, what does it mean by that? Not only do you go to the area they've evacuated, you create a buffer zone within Lebanon from which further attacks are not possible.
That was anyway the aim of UN Resolution 1701.
Yes.
You know, that the buffer zone of 30-35 kilometers.
Yes, up to the Litani River.
Litani River.
They go and occupy it, and like they occupied the Golan Heights. They refused the Golan Heights since 73. They have not given it back to them because it's essential to security. Similarly, they'll hold on the area after the Litani River because it's essential to their security, and that becomes part of the buffer zone as well. Which now brings you to the third and most important threat, Iran.
Now, if I can talk a little bit about, from whatever little bit I know about the Israel thing, you know, right now, from whatever I have been following
You were
it.
there?
Yeah, and they have gone in, I think their initial operation is right now limited to 2.5-3 kilometers. And from what they are saying, it's difficult to, control the Hezbollah right now, because even though the leadership has been kind of wiped out, they have their long and medium range rockets and missiles have been neutralized, but they have not been able to neutralize their short range rockets. So as a result of which, what is happening over there is that they keep on, so in terms of, if their aim is to, secure the northern areas, that is going to take a long time, because the short range missiles and rockets are not neutralized, and because they are all underground. So now talk about the Iran threat.
That is what they call the head of the snake.
Octopus.
Head of the octopus, of course, because they've got so many tentacles.
So many tentacles,
And again, now with Trump coming back, which you brought about, Trump makes no bones of his dislike for Iran. If you take a look at it, he was the one who walked out of the US-Iran deal. Iran was adhering to its part of the part of the deal. They had opened their plans for inspection, everything. Trump walked out of it.
Yeah.
Right? He also makes no secret of his disdain for the mullahs and the fact that he wants regime change. And his primary aim is that Iran should not be anywhere close to attaining its nuclear capabilities.
Right.
Now, what it implies, fortunately for the world, Israel and Iran are separated by 3 countries between them and 2,000 kilometers of land of Jordan, Saudi, and the others, and Syria. Otherwise, it would have been a disaster for the world. So their exchanges are going to be long-range exchanges in which Israel has a tremendous edge. But even should they go after their nuclear assets, one does not know whether they can hit it. They will be well protected, will be well guarded, and an unsuccessful strike will only make it hasten the process.
I think they also have everything underground.
They're all underground. All the facilities are underground. So, but the 2 prime aims of Israel, which will be, like they said, that the US administration, not only will they give it a nudge and a wink, they will actively assist them through satellite imagery, weaponry, getting the Saudis on board. They will assist them, making sure that their assets are placed in the Mediterranean, and the Red Sea to act as a threat to Iran. So if the strike goes in, even if the nuclear assets are not destroyed completely, it will be set back by a few years. The ultimate aim is regime change.
Yes.
Which has been the aim of the US since 1979, ever since the Ayatollahs took over. So, if you have Iran economically has been very weakened, you have a series of such attacks. Remember, each of them is a loss of face to the leadership. A situation is created, perhaps where an uprising from within suddenly arises, like we saw in Bangladesh, Very much on the cards. And the removal of the Ayatollahs, honestly, would not be such a bad thing after all, for the entire world community as such. That may be the overall long-term aim of the war.
But when we are talking about, this carte blanche that Trump has given to Israel, you can hit their nuclear installations, you can hit their oil installations, that's going to cause a lot of disruption, isn't it? In terms of especially oil, if you're looking at.
Yes. I don't think they'll hit the oil installations, because I think the underlying thing is that it will really attain nothing by hitting the oil installation. Nuclear assets, military assets, yes. All the missile batteries, the Republican Guard units, they could be hit. The oil, as a military target, by hitting an oil installation, you will attain nothing very much. You have degraded its economic potential. And like you said, the environmental disaster would be tremendous, not only to them, to the rest of the world, so you lose world sympathy. So they may still not do it. But nuclear assets and military targets, that's fair game.
Yeah. Now, when we are looking at a ceasefire, possibility of ceasefire, Israel is totally against it.
Yes.
So how can Trump possibly push? I mean, I've been there, I've talked to
Yes.
people, I keep talking to people. That is one aim that Israel does not have anywhere on the horizon.
Right.
So how exactly can Trump, how do you foresee Trump being able to bring Israel to declare ceasefire?
There are a lot of carrots which Trump can put in front of Netanyahu. Remember, to give Trump credit, he was the one who engineered the Abraham's Accord. He got Israel acceptance, or rather his administration got Israel acceptance with UAE, Saudi,
Yes.
Morocco, and the Arab nations, which is something, as you know, the Israelis have been craving for since their birth. And acceptance by UAE and Saudi Arabia is very big. The Abraham Accords is still holding, right? So that threat of the Abraham Accords fraying can be put to the Israelis. Remember, if the Saudis turn against Israel, then it'll be difficult for them to manage themselves in the Middle East. The other thing is, Trump has been in his so-called deal of the century, which was engineered by his son-in-law, Jared
Kushner.
Yeah. What was the deal of the century? It basically meant Israel gets whatever they want. They keep your areas, you keep your occupied territories. You get Jerusalem as your capital, and he even moved his embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, right? Now, he's offering such good deals to Israel. He will be extracting, he's a good negotiator, so they will extract the pound of flesh from Israel, and he will say, okay, enough is enough, you've got your war aim so far, now, let's bring a halt to it.
But
So that is the kind of arm twisting he could resort to, and he will.
No, but then the problem here in this case is that Iran is the malign player in terms of, it does not have the military capability.
Yes.
And the thing is that there's no parity between the two countries, but it has terrorist proxies. So it is not just about controlling Iran, it's also controlling the Houthis, the Hezbollah. Unless and until that part is switched off, it's next to impossible to even hope for peace in the Middle East.
But you see, look at it. Hamas has been, I would say, it's been
Decimated.
eliminated. Let's not say the fact that ideology is right. It will continue, but it'll take a generation to rise. Hezbollah has been severely crippled.
Yeah,
It'll take a
it has.
decade for it to recover its military capabilities. The Houthis also, if you take a look at the Houthi, the Shia militia in Iraq and Syria, what are they dependent upon? Long-range missiles and drones being provided by Iran.
Yeah.
That's what and that's the limit of the capabilities. If that supply chain, which is, remember, they're hitting the missile factories, they're hitting the drone factories. If that is destroyed, the capability of the Houthis and the Shia militia is going to be virtually nothing. So that's what they're going to be hitting. The feeder mechanism, which feeds them that.
That is exactly the aim right now.
Yes.
So that That's a good point, actually.
Yeah.
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 But then there is always the China factor. You never know. I mean, the invisible player, the invisible hand, that China thing can always come in, but perhaps not right now. Last question. What exactly can India look forward to, or how India is likely to be impacted? Of course, peace is always welcome.
Huh.
But this Trump's terrible hatred for Iran in particular, and India's support for, we all know. We say we are neutral, but I don't think we
Of
are really
course.
neutral. Support for Russia. What does all this mean for India?
Well, India has handled the situation superbly. We have played such a nice balancing act in the. I'm talking the Russia-Ukraine war. We have played a wonderful balancing act in which we have held our own with equations with Russia, with Ukraine, and the USA as well. We are still in a situation where we are being, I won't say quoted, we are being regarded as allies. Firstly, we were very open about it. You have to really take your hat off and salute Dr. Jai Shankar for the manner in which he stood up so open and said, India will do what is good for India and its 1.4 billion people. Period. There were no excuses, no hemming, hawing, nothing. We were very right. And what did we do? We said we defied sanctions by doing what? By buying crude oil from Russia. What do we do with that? We refined it and we became the largest exporter of refined oil products to Europe. We have saved Europe from a recession.
We stabilize the world economy.
Yes, by having good terms. Prime Minister Modi, on the fact that his personal equations with both leaders are good, it means he's one of the few who can pick up the phone and perhaps start the conversation which gets them to the table together. So we've handled it really well so far. We've held our own in that. And as far as the Middle East goes, again, in this situation, the position of neutrality is the best. We have got good dealings with Iran, very good. We are dependent upon them for a lot of our trade, the Chabahar port, so much of it. We have excellent relations with Israel, with Saudi. The Palestinian people, we profess support, which we will continue professing. But otherwise, realpolitik demands that in the Middle East situation, keep a distance, observe till it stabilizes.
Absolutely. So, and what is your? Are we going to have a further edition of this book, Ukraine, Gaza, Taiwan, or are you going to write something else, or something else on military history?
The problem is, Joyeeta, you were there when we launched the revised edition.
Yes.
Events in these wars are moving at such a rapid pace. I have to virtually come with a revised edition every 3 months.
So yes, let's see, viewers, what's the next book Ajay Singh is writing. And thank you so much for being on this show. It has been very interesting, of course, discussion. This is a topic, it kind of really makes my brain cells jumping around. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Joyeeta. It's always a pleasure having a little tete-a-tete with you like this on subjects of these issues.
That is of interest.
And it is a pleasure.
Thank
you so much.
You're welcome. And thank you, viewers, for watching. Until the next time.